Okay, so I'm running a live video in the back of this on the old Tic Tacs. So whatever. Um, yeah, what do I even want to do today? Um, so Thomas can do a lot. Um, actually, he can't do a whole lot, but the Thomas engine does pop up, and we do get a little something here, but not a whole lot. I mean, maybe basic animation handling would be nice. And the movement's still kind of not great. There's like some acceleration here. We don't handle really any multiplications by or tracking thereof of delta time or anything like that. But whatever. Maybe one day we can make that work. Okay, I think what I want to do here, we need to handle collisions, we need to handle animations, we need to handle fonts and sprite sheets, maybe. So maybe animation would be the best way of going about this. And maybe we can make like an animation class. And that animation class, based on certain flags we set in it, from maybe changes in velocity or position on the player, can then trigger a change in a texture. So instead of grabbing a texture from the player class, where we define an SDL texture, we can instead pull it from the animator. I have cool names for every, like, I have Thomas, the game engine. I have Genesis, my world creation engine. I can't talk. That actually spits out tiles to the screen. I have Rainbow that categorizes colors. I'm not sure what I should call my animator, but we should call it something. Something clever. Maybe just animator for right now. New class. I don't know. We can call it like a bunch of movie names are popping into my head, or like studio names like Ghibli, but I don't think I can call it that. Maybe I can call. I don't know about trademarks, but I am using my game engine's titled Thomas the Game Engine, so maybe I can call it Yubaba from Spirited Away. Because I like her character design. There's also a recorded play of Spirited Away on HBO. That is definitely worth watching. Yeah. How about you, Baba? Our animation engine. All right. Because the naming of the engine is the most important part. So, Yubaba, what does she have? What does this magic lady have? Um, what would be required here? It would need to handle a possible set of animations, which really just, or a set of textures we could pass to it. I don't handle texture mapping right now from like or from a sprite sheet. So maybe I could just load them in and pass them as needed. Um, Load them in as like fields on the player or whatever given entity, and then just pass those to Yubaba and trigger different textures depending on different flags set. So, like, say the movement or the player's movement velocity was last -1x or negative value to x, which would indicate it is moving to the left. We would show the left side animation, which we would designate. And we only have like a 2D animation system right now, so it's, or we don't have any animation system, but we have a 2D world view. So it would be as simple as flipping the sprite around in something like Unity, where you can track, like, it's still tracked in a vector 3, so you could just like negative out the z index. We can't do that in Thomas because I don't my game engine has no concept of what a vector 3 is. So by the way, friends, I'm not reading comments. Not reading comments on the TikTok thread. I did see someone mention favorite programming language. It's not C++. I'm learning C++. I think my favorite that I ever really worked with was Kotlin. But I haven't worked with Kotlin in some time. I've been working with a lot of JavaScript and a lot of Python, but we're using like this whole Flask setup at work. And that's kind of... It's not necessarily Flask that killed my love for Python. It's how we use Flask. Anyway, I used to like Python a lot more. So I don't mind JVM languages. Not a big fan of Java. I used a lot of C#. I don't really have a favorite. I just use a language for what I need to get done. And in this case, we're building Thomas the Game Engine, a poor wrapper over SDL, but you know, it's okay if it's not phenomenal. If it's worth doing wrong. So I'm gonna do it wrong. All right, we need like maybe a standard vector set of like pointers to SDL textures. This is probably not how I want to do it, but textures. We also need to include SDL.h. I'm a little rusty too. I feel like, I don't know. I just got off work. I'm eating a sausage and some bread. Got the old sausage there. Got some mustard on it. Trying to get some energy. I want some baby carrots too, but whatever. All right, so what we actually need is a constructor. You know, a lot of people, I see a lot of people implementing deconstructors on these, but I don't think we need deconstructors. I'm not like really, I don't have to free memory or anything, but of course I don't know anything, so. All right, so Yubaba, we can at least, oops, Yubaba, at least start out the constructor here. Do I hack? No, I never really got into hacking and like reverse engineering and stuff. That was never my thing. Did a lot of game dev for a little while, a lot of web development, a lot of like test automation solutions for software and websites. So basically writing bots that go through and test websites, but not a whole lot of hacking. Dipped my toes into operating system development there for a hot second. Okay, so in Yubaba, what do we standard vector SDL texture? Usually have no idea what I'm doing until I kind of bump my head into a problem. So we're just gonna implement this, see what happens, see what I need to add, and go from there. But I'm thinking we take in some textures, and then, oh, is it this? Textures equals textures. And then, see, the what I'm thinking in my head here is like, I want to keep this somewhat generic, so to speak. Generic in that I want to be able to plug in this animation system as a component for any entity, not just the player. So I need to, I don't want to write an animation engine just for the player character. But maybe we can do that and then generalize it later on. Yeah, I'm all about building out implementations as I need to. So really what we need to do is feed in some textures and then have the animator keep track of the current texture that should be displayed. So SDL texture. Also, like, I'm for the Tic Tac friends out there, I'm learning C++ and SDL as I go along. So my knowledge of C++ and SDL is incredibly low compared to other languages and other ecosystems and other tool chains. Okay, so we have a current texture. We have the textures we actually take in, and then I guess we need I don't know, some booleans perhaps. Yeah, okay. Boolean, and then I think what I'm going to do is I'm not actually writing a whole lot of code. I'm brainstorming here. What I think I want to do here is write some methods that say like animate left, animate right, and add methods in for each animation that may pop up for a given entity, so that I can call like the same methods regardless of the entity, but show different textures depending on what's going on. So maybe moved left, moved right, and I think that's all we need right now. We'll just flip the texture, flip the texture around, add two textures until we can actually support sprite sheets where we can pull multiple textures from, which shouldn't be too hard. Although a brief Google search revealed to me that I might have to be doing, or I might have to have some sort of like custom implementation here, because, which shouldn't be hard. Like if my sprite sheet is allegedly 32, maybe 32 by 32 per sprite on this large sprite sheet, I can then just kind of cut textures and move along the columns and rows, but we're not implementing that right now. So we'll say void what do we want to call this? I want a verb. Also want some water. We can call this maybe, yeah, just animate left, I guess. Although I'm thinking the data structure I bring in shouldn't be a vector. Maybe I need to write my own texture wrapping class so I can start assigning some values to it, like whether or not. I'm just trying to think back to my Unity days where you would do this through a UI, but I don't have a UI, so animate right. But it would be nice to have a wrapper class that's or maybe not a wrapper class. We just need some way to signify whether I want this texture to be displayed or that texture to be displayed, A or B, left or right. Personal project. Yeah, someone asked if this was a personal or work project. Personal. What I'm doing at work right now is basically building up web applications as like a business solution for internal issues we have. Basically, we're like starting a project that generates code, kind of. We're integrating it through a web app and using anyway, I can't really get too much into it. It's a lot of research and development and like internal development tools. This is the fun stuff for me because I get to learn about things. So but yeah, I ultimately learned how to code just kind of like I lived rather poor back in the day, and I had this really crummy laptop I picked up for cheap from a pawn shop, and I would go to this coffee shop where they had free Wi-Fi, and I just kind of taught myself some. I think I was doing a lot of React stuff back then. A lot of stuff that's doesn't really apply nowadays. It was like back in the day of like React.create component or whatever. It's a totally different setup nowadays with their functional components. All right, Yubaba. Okay, I'm not sure entirely how I'm going to go about designating whether a texture is meant to be left or a texture is meant to be right, or like what texture I want to show, because there's no like user input to be able to decide which is which. So I think I'm going to go with the lazy solution here and just implement a texture wrapping class and just shove that information in there. I can come up with a better solution later. If it's worth doing, it is worth doing. Wrong. So we'll just say texture. Oh, you know, actually, let's call this paint. I like that better. Oh, we don't just want paint CPP. Okay, we actually, yes, remove that. I want to add a new class. There we go. So we'll call it paint. Yeah, call it paint. And paint should be easy to think or easy to like plan out here. We don't need to put too much thought into it. It takes in an SDL or a pointer to an SDL texture, and then we just need to. No, I'm going to be real lazy about it. We'll come up with a better solution later. It's all about prototyping. Bool is left texture. Bool is right texture. Okay, radical. So in Yubaba, what we're actually going to bring in is not a vector of textures. What we're going to bring in is a vector or a vector of paints. So include paint.h. Cool. But yeah, you know, I think the fun thing with programming is just kind of stumbling through it until you figure it out. You know, a lot of people find it incredibly hard, and it is. It's not necessarily like an easy thing to do, but I don't think people allow themselves to fail as much as they should. I also think I've been kind of quiet on my recording here. Anyway, you know, you just got to stumble through it and fail. Okay, so we're going to take in a vector of paint and okay, cool. And then what's, oh, right, paint. Okay, cool. So we'll say current texture equals Oh. Okay, so we know that this vector is most likely, we're not going to be implementing, I'm not going to shove like 50 animations into this vector. So I think I'm just going to straight up for loop it. And we can come back to a more elegant solution later on. So select texture. You know, I think I'm just gonna code all of that straight into the animate left and animate right. So we'll say paint texture equals null. Can we not do that? I'll just declare it. Okay. For int 0 or int I equals 0, I is less than textures dot length, right? How do you get the length of an array? I know this for every other language, but C++. Length of, or excuse me, not an array, a fixed-sized array, but rather the length of a vector, but not in mathematic terms in C++. Size. Okay. What? Oh, is it a function? Oh, it is. Usually that's just like a property. Might be kind of fun to like re-implement some of the standard library. You know, when I get better at C++. But I know Andreas, however you say his name, Kling of Serenity OS, they re-implemented a good chunk of the standard library of C++. I'm just like infinitely impressed by those guys. Okay, so we'll say if textures I dot is left texture, then we'll just say current texture equals textures I. We don't need this declaration. And hopefully this is pretty quick. You know, it's like, again, I think max maybe like 4 or so animations are going to be, or 4 or so textures are going to be in here. Okay, and then we just need is right texture. Okay, amazing. So that's coming along. Now we need to go back to player, and player needs an animator. So we'll bring in Yubaba animator. Oh, no, let's call her by her name, you know? Okay. Include Yubaba. All right, radical. And then I think here in the player class, yeah, we load in the bitmaps, and then right? Yeah, we load it into a surface and then we convert it over to a texture. That's right. So what we need to do is implement that for multiple textures, and then boot up Yubaba. Okay, that should be easy. Let me add some comments here. Texture handling, attribute handling. Okay. But as someone asked, you can make your own booleans. You can make anything. Booleans just 0, 1. It's the implementation that makes it fun. Null right here is really just a flag to 0. I mean, it says expands to 0. That's all that means. And null and 0 are honestly technically different things, but that doesn't matter too much. Like 1, I always like the pizza metaphor for null. Oh, we need to load up GIMP. Oops. But like the pizza metaphor or analogy, I guess. You know, if you order a pizza and the pizza guy shows up with your pizza, that's a value of 1. You have 1 pizza. If he shows up but the pizza box is empty, then you have no pizza. That's 0 pizza. If the delivery driver never shows up, that's null. There is no pizza to count as 0. There is no it's not there. Okay, I have a sprite map somewhere. I think it's this guy, yeah. I've used this sprite map for a lot of stuff. I think these are all basically 16 by 16, so we need 2 of these. And then I need some alpha backgrounds. My understanding of this program is also incredibly limited. I am not a designer, I'm not an artist. I guess I play a lot of music, but I'm not like a visual artist, really. I do a little bit of photography, but nothing serious. Okay. So we have some alpha transparent things going on here. So let's go ahead and, oh, this is right. This guy's got like a whole, they have the animation set up. So we could set up a lot of animations in this. And even then, like, we'd only be iterating through so many things at a time. And again, like, we might be able to, oops. We might be able to make it more elegant in the future, so it's not just like a horrible performant or a horrible performing implementation. How the heck do I flip an image in flip image? Transform, sick. Was it tools, transform tools, flip? Ah, down here. There we go. Nice. Okay. So let's export these straight into the repository source. Repos, game. Okay, we have player 2. I'm going to say this is what, player left? Yeah, player left. Oh, we need not a PNG, I want a bitmap. Someone asked, how do you combine front-end code from one language to back-end code with another language? That is a great question and something I do routinely. So if we come to my GitHub here, we have my HackerCrust front end and HackerCrust back end. And basically, the entire point of a front end is like the website you see here, right? And the entire point of a back end is all of the data that you might see on a given website. So if we open up our dev tools here, you can see all of the HTML and all that. That's all the front end. But here in the network tab, if we refresh, you see all of this stuff coming in. These are all from different servers and different resources and different stuff. So basically, they're two separate apps, but the front end calls out to the back end and says, hey man, can you give me this information? And through authentication checks or whatever else, it sends it back. I wonder if I can find... Is Hacker News still up? Or Hacker Crest? I stopped paying for this domain for a sec. Oh yeah, I guess, yeah, my backend seems to be down. But, I am sending out various requests to a backend. So basically the front end just says, hey, give me information, backend sends it. And then front end colors it up and makes it look pretty. And, well, I mean, it doesn't matter what the language is. You could write a front end in whatever, HTML or anything. The back end basically deploys it to something like Heroku, to a cloud service, to an internal service. They're basically making this public. And what that means is if you go to like the Hacker News API, which I use to build Hacker Crust, you can see they have a number, like all this info here you can grab from their API. I don't care what language this is written in. My implementation I wrote in JavaScript and Express. But basically, you can see these links here. My server, or excuse me, my front end, my website, sends what's known as a fetch request using the fetch API, which is based on REST. Yeah, RESTful. You can see there's a Wikipedia page for it. And this is the representational state transfer, but what that really means is I want to get something or I want to post something, you know, either I want to get something from the server or send it something. So my front end sends something to a web address of some sort, and that web address represents basically like a terminal kind of window, a machine running in the background. In that machine, based on the information I pass or the information I'm trying to get, will either deny me access or give me the information. So basically, instead of having a URL like this that goes to a website, you would have a URL that would give you information. You should look into REST methodology. But that's the short of it. I mean, it is a complicated thing. But we're doing game dev, so wish I had more time to talk about that, though. It is a lot of fun. I actually really do enjoy web development. A lot of people cry about JavaScript, but it's not that bad. I don't know. It's not that bad if you use it... Well, I was going to say properly, but I'm not really sure what that means, to be honest. How do I combine JavaScript with C, you ask? I think you're asking the wrong question here. You don't combine the languages. You write totally different applications in one language. So, like, you couldn't really communicate with C++ because I'm not sending anything out. Like, but if we look here at the Hacker Crust backend, if we look at some of this code, and go to the app file, what I have here is basically a whole bunch of routes and a whole bunch of logic, specifically here on the app.get. So this I would host on a web server. Doesn't matter if this was C++, doesn't matter if this was JavaScript, doesn't matter if it was C# or Java. The entire point is I was able to use a library, which is code written by somebody else, to implement my server. So this would be running on, like, if I ran it locally, instead of, you know, github.com, it would be localhost, you know, with some port numbers. So like localhost colon 5000. And if I followed that up with a slash, it would return Hacker Crust API is up and running. If I asked it for comments, slash comments, you know, like it says, I don't know, if we come here, look at this. So I clicked on a video within YouTube, and you notice how this URL says watch, and then it has a parameter here. It's kind of like that. I would call out to the watch endpoint or to the watch route, and it would send video information back to me. Or in this case, I'm getting news stories from Hacker News. So you don't really combine languages. You write different applications that can utilize each other. You know, you got to think of, it's like how you can use a saw to build a table, and then you can use, you can make pottery to make a nice little vase to put on that table, and they work well together, you know? But you don't combine the saw with your spinning wheel and your clay, you know what I mean? Maybe that's not a great metaphor. Okay, so what were we trying to do here? Anyway, you know, I think the best way to try and learn that stuff is to run head first into it and fail and learn what preconceptions you had, or which ones were false, to be completely honest with you. There's also Discords and like Reddit. I don't really recommend Stack Overflow. Stack Overflow is a great resource, but not necessarily for asking questions on. Did something with player. Right, we're implementing Yubaba, which means we need to, in the player friend here. Okay, awesome. So we're going to say auto player left texture equals paint. Oh, right, we're using paint. Blah. Okay, so paint needs a constructor. Pane. Well, that's about right. And the paint needs to take in an SDL texture. And then a Boolean is left texture. We'll say equals false. And is right texture equals false. But yeah, maybe one of these days it would be oh, Boolean. Maybe one of these days I'll just hop on stream and answer a bunch of programming questions. I've been programming for 9 years. Oh, it's been about 9 years now. And every day I see people on YouTube who are better than me. But, you know, I don't really do this for the competition. I know it's a competitive field, but at the same time, like, I just enjoy coding. So, paint. And it keeps me from just, like, lounging around, drinking beer, or, like, you know, sitting on the couch watching TV. Okay, so but someone mentioned their computer science major. Yeah, I never even went to school. Not saying you shouldn't. I honestly think it's probably a great resource. I mean, at this point, like, I just don't have certain, like, I don't have a certain theoretical foundation. I have bits and pieces of it, but basically just what I learned. It is nice to be taken through, like, the theoretical concepts with a helping hand, you know? Now I'm just kind of relegated to watching YouTube videos. But a lot of that stuff doesn't necessarily transfer to the job. You know, I've only talked about big O notation like once, maybe. And it was like we were talking about an interview question. So it didn't even apply to the job. Okay, so texture. So this texture equals texture is left texture equals oops. But yeah, you know, I think if I have the chance, I'll go to college at some point, but it's just frankly like not a good investment for me at the moment. And my wife just got out of school, so you know, we already kind of have student loans to deal with. Okay, so back to player. I would like to be able to move this little guy at least left and right before I end this. Oh, of course there were build errors. Whatever, I'll come back to that. Oh, because we didn't finish out our constructor. That's fine. So, oh, we need to pass in textures. So I think we'll just do, this is the bitmap. Oh, there we go. My caps lock was on. Okay. So we said what? Player left, right? We had yeah, player left, player right. Auto player right bitmap equals SDL load bitmap player right. And then we can say auto player left texture. I keep forgetting about the auto keyword in C++ because I learned it off an old standard that just like, or quote unquote, I never really truly learned C++. But back when I put a lot of time into it, I did not have the chance to actually use the auto keyword or some of the newer features from like C++ 11 or even 17. Okay. But if this SDL project goes well enough, I might try OpenGL after this, or maybe just continue on. It would be interesting and probably the wrong direction to go, but it would be interesting to kind of try and implement 3D graphics in this engine. Okay. Player left, player right. So now we can create our paint classes. So player left equals paints, player left texture true. There we go. Let's say is left texture equals true. Can we do that? That's how Python does it. Yeah, probably won't let me. No. That's fine. Okay, and then paint. Player right paints equals paint. Player right paint false true. Oh boy. Oh. Texture. Oh. Yeah. There we go. And then I'll keep this stuff to do deprecate. Now we can initialize Yubaba. How the heck do I don't even remember how to actually initialize a vector. Do it here and yeah, that's what I thought. Okay. So oh, player left paint, player right paint. Cool. Oh, you know what we need to do too is freeze some surfaces. We do. Okay. We have like no error handling. That's fine. Okay, so SDL free surface. Player left BMP, SDL free surface, player right BMP. Oh, capital. All right. Yubaba equals Yubaba. And we just need to pass in paints for animation. Okay, wonderful. Now I'm thinking the actual implementation of this is pretty easy. We need to go back to Thomas. And we need to go to the render player function. And instead of rendering the player texture, it needs to be Yubaba dot current texture. Oh, dot texture. There we go. I wonder if this actually works. That would be cool if it worked first try. No, of course not. So what's up? Oh, no default constructor. Ugh. I hate that. Okay. Yubaba CPP. Do. There we go. Right, there's no current texture. It's null because we haven't assigned it. Right. So, player.c. Where's player.cpp? All right. So what we need to do here is after we, current texture equals textures 0. That should at least get the little guy on the screen. Apparently it doesn't. Oh, textures dot texture. There we go. Still doesn't. So what are we doing wrong here? Thomas. Let's debug. But we have 2 textures in there. Okay. Let's try this again. Maybe I'll have to come back. I think I might. Yeah, I'll come back to this.